What's going on, guys? McDowell here. Today I'd like to do something I don't normally do on the channel, which is offer a beginner's guide for one of the various league mechanics available to farm in the game. In this case, I want to talk about Harvest. I'm hoping that a lot of the information will be evergreen in nature, but I am going to discuss the Affliction League mechanic a fair amount because I think this league offers some interesting challenges and opportunities for the mechanic that may not be the case in other league settings. So why do I think Harvest is a really good mechanic for newer players? I would say that the number one reason is the consistency of income. In my experience, there isn't another mechanic that is as reliable in terms of the amount of divines that you're going to be able to produce than Harvest. Now, if you have a lot of game knowledge or a lot of skill in a different mechanic, you can certainly surpass what I'm able to make from Harvest. However, as far as a set it and forget it, you know that if you log on and play for an hour or two that you're going to make a couple divines, 3 or 4, whatever the case is for how fast you can farm. There really isn't anything like Harvest. Now I want to jump in real fast and just talk about the basics. So Harvest is a subzone within your map that you will click on, the Sacred Grove, and within that it will spawn various plots where you will make a choice between 2 options per plot. There will be 3 colors of monsters and life force that you will be farming. So there is Wild, which is purple, Vivid, which is yellow, and Primal, which is blue. And my first bit of advice is to make sure that you become accustomed to the practice of consistently being aware of the market value of each one of these different colored life forces. Generally speaking, the yellow will often be the most valuable, and purple and blue will sort of jockey for second position, but I would say that most of the time the purple is slightly more valuable than the blue. However, the prices do fluctuate even on a daily basis, even on an hourly basis. And so, as I said, you want to make sure that you are always aware of the going market rate for each one of these different colors as you are listing them. And just like any other item in the game, if you list something and within 30 seconds you are immediately inundated with an infinite number of whispers to purchase it, chances are you may have listed it at a price that is not advantageous to you. In the current league, juicing is a huge part of the meta. And for a lot of people, I think there might be some struggle there with feeling like you either have to engage with the league mechanic and make your maps too hard to complete, or you are ignoring it and missing out on huge amounts of potential profit. So yesterday, I spent the entire day completely ignoring the league mechanic and only farming Harvest and Harbinger. And I was able to farm more than half of the currency that I needed to purchase a headhunter. At the time of that purchase, it was like 160 divine, and so I needed to farm about 85, 80, somewhere in that range divines in order to make that purchase on top of the currency that I already had in my stash. And so if you math that out over a 10 or 11 hour play session, that means that in conjunction with Harbinger, I was able to make, roughly 7 to 8 divines per hour. Now, a lot of that came from fracturing shards, which drop from Harbingers, and there were some other things that are a little bit more random, some divine drops, and a few items that sold for a lot of chaos orbs, things like that. But the main driving force of that profit was consistent gains from selling life force. And so if you are struggling with the league mechanic, you are having difficulty clearing maps that are all juiced up with the wood sauce, then I recommend Harvest and Harbinger as mechanics that you can fall back on and enjoy profits without feeling like you are missing out. Now, obviously, when I engage with the league mechanic and juice up and farm, tier 16s with Legion in them, and I'm in burial chambers and cards are dropping and all that stuff, the profits are much higher. But I found that completely ignoring the league mechanic and just doing some Harvest, killing some Harbingers, was absolutely a viable choice for acquiring seed currency to buy a specific item, as I did, or farming up a bunch of currency to settle up your build, whichever archetype you might be playing, in order to allow you to begin engaging with the league mechanic in a way that is more enjoyable and more profitable to you. So, I want to jump over here and talk about the Atlas tree. We'll go over some of the nodes, and then I will actually narrate a clip of me clearing a harvest grove so that I can discuss the specific way that I approach the mechanic in map. So let's jump over to the Atlas tree. Now, I want to go over all of the important notables for the league mechanic. I will link this Atlas passive tree in the description below if you wish to copy the entire thing. But before I get into that, I do want to talk just a little bit about how you scale harvest. Now, I am not an expert. You can look up, I think the best video that I've seen on the topic of scaling life force gains was made by Firegrass, I think a year ago. But look up his channel, find the video called Harvest Doesn't Scale the Way You Think It Does, and he has a fantastic breakdown of the way that you can scale your life force gains if that is something that interests you. But in my experience, the thing to keep in mind is that the number one scaler for getting more life force out of a map is going to be pack size. Now, item quantity does scale it, if I understand it correctly, but it is a secondary, and it's just not as efficient as scaling pack size. However, I have seen a lot of people sort of think of harvest as sort of an all or nothing proposition, where either you are juicing up the pack size at all costs and reaping the gains, or it's not worth it. And I would like to advocate for something of a middle ground there. I think that you should consider pack size, and where it is convenient, I think that you should endeavor to increase the pack size in your maps. But I have found that I am able to reap the benefits without needing to fully juice the mechanic. And I suppose now is as good a time as any to discuss the ways that you can juice your harvest. So there are two kinds of compasses that you can use, and one of those is broken into three subtypes. So there is a compass for each one of the three colors that will double the amount of life force that is dropped, and it will make each plot contain that color. And just like the values of the individual colors as far as selling them, the cost of these compasses will sort of mirror that. So the yellow compasses will be very expensive, and the blue and purple will sort of jockey around for second place, with, again, the purple typically being a little bit more expensive than the blue. I almost never use the yellow compasses. I almost always use either the blue or the purple, and that has worked very well for me. The other compass that you could use will just simply guarantee the Sacred Grove in each one of your maps. And in previous videos that I've done on the topic of harvest, I've gotten a lot of questions about why don't you use the Sacred Grove compass? And the answer to that is, if you take all the nodes on the tree for harvest and you block all of the other league mechanics except for Delirium, it has been my experience that you will get a harvest in about 3 out of 4 of your maps. Now, yesterday I had opportunity to get a very large sample size, and I did have one instance where I got 4 maps in a row that did not have a Sacred Grove. So in that case, I was basically forfeiting the total value of a purple harvest compass, which at that time, I think I purchased them for about 75C a piece. So if you are in a position that you can afford it and you do not want to deal with the occasional map that does not have a harvest in it, or you are worried about the rare occurrence of not getting a harvest in a segment of maps, then by all means run both the purple or blue life force doubling compass and the guaranteed Sacred Grove compass. But in my experience, merely running the compass for the color of your preference and having everything spec'd up, as I've just mentioned, on the tree is sufficient that I am able to enjoy harvest farming and reap substantial benefits. Other ways that you can scale the mechanic are with altars. And the general traditional wisdom is to use the blue altars and select as many of the options that give you more quantity and rarity as possible. I never do this. I don't enjoy the blue altars, and I find that the bubblegum currencies, the chaos orbs, this league, even gem cutters, prisms, things like that, that drop from the red altars are, to me, more valuable than the inconvenience of dealing with the blue altars and hunting for the elusive divine altars. So as you can see, I have all of the nodes, the relevant nodes for the red altars on this tree. That is what I used yesterday. I made a substantial amount from Awakened Sextants, from Greater and Grand Eldritch Embers, so on and so forth. So I recommend the red altars, but again, if your character is sufficiently powerful, or if your preference is for the blue, or if you just want to juice the harvest encounters up a little bit more, then certainly the blue altars are the more powerful option specifically for interacting with harvest. And then, of course, it's worth mentioning that the way that you roll your maps will also affect the amount of harvest life force that drops. So if you can run corrupted 8 mod maps, if you have a supply of those that have 40 plus pack size and a large amount of quantity and rarity on them, then those will yield you more gains than simply alking your maps and running them with whatever mods your build is comfortable with. Again, yesterday I did not run any 8 mod maps. I just alked a bunch of maps. I don't even think I chiseled them. And I just ran them if my build, if it didn't have any mods on it that were a problem for my build. And so again, you can juice the mechanic further, but you don't have to realize the benefits. So let's jump in here and talk about the notables. So Call of the Grove is simply giving you more chance to see the Sacred Grove in your maps. And again, if you're not using the guaranteed Sacred Grove compass, this is mandatory. If you are using the Sacred Grove compass, you could unspec these points and use them elsewhere. And then here in the big harvest wheel, we have Bumper Crop. The Sacred Grove in your maps has 50% chance to contain an additional harvest. Self-explanatory. More harvest is more life force for you, so that's just it's a no-brainer. And then over here we have Bountiful Harvest. Additional experience, which we don't care about, but harvest plants in your maps have 10% chance to spawn an additional monster is huge. More monsters, more life force. And then moving up here, we have Doubling Season. Life force dropped by harvest monsters in your maps has 10% chance to be duplicated. Again, all of these are pretty self-explanatory and pretty much no-brainers. The opportunity to have a life force drop be doubled is always going to be good. And then up here, Heart of the Grove. Harvest crops in your maps have 60% increased chance to contain a tier 4 plant. Higher tier plants is more life force, and I'll talk more about the tiering of the monsters when I get into a clip of me actually doing a harvest a little bit later in the video. And then harvests in your maps have 10% chance for the unchosen crop to not wilt. This will just mean that when you make your selection on a given plot that has the 2 different colors or occasionally 2 of the same color, whichever one you did not pick won't disappear as it normally does, and you'll be able to complete both. So again, just more opportunities for life force drops. And then over here, we have the drought nodes, which are easy to misunderstand if you quickly read them. So you actually select these when you want the associated color to become less common. And so in my case, I have selected to make blue less common, and then I'm running the purple compass. And so therefore, I will get a preponderance of purple life force in my maps, with yellow coming up in second place, and I will rarely see blue. And then the keystone for the mechanic, crop rotation, I'm going to recommend that new players just steer away from this entirely. Granted, I have not experimented with this a great deal, but there is a high degree of gamba involved in this, and it's going to really alter the way that you're going to need to engage with the mechanic, and it will affect the consistency in a way that I do not think is going to be the right choice for people that are brand new to the mechanic. And that is essentially it in terms of the notables on the tree. And I recommend if you're going to farm harvest, just grab all of them. And again, block everything except for the Sacred Grove and Mirrors of Delirium if you can handle Mirrors of Delirium in your maps. If not, go ahead and block that too. It'll increase your chances of getting your harvests in each map. And as you can see, I am also spec'd into Harbinger. And the reason for that is that similar to Life Force drops, I have found that farming Harbingers is not really affected a great deal by the current League mechanic. And so Harvest and Harbinger really fit well together if you are in a position where you are wanting a farming strategy that does not require you to engage with the Wildwood. And so now let's jump over and I will show a clip of me completing a harvest in a map and talk a little bit about the way that I go about doing that. All right, here we are in a harvest. So we're going to run over and we're going to take a look at our plots. And we can see that I've got more of the bottom row, the light blue text for the yellow, and yellow is more valuable, so we click that one. And we're going to stutter step around and kill the mobs. Now, you'll want to read the text, particularly if you're running a squishy build like I am. In this case, we have a Devourer who is going to pop out of the ground, drop a bunch of these bombs that explode after you run over them, and it is generally just a nightmare. And then I'm going to have to dodge these chaos bombs that chase you around in the air and then fall on you. And then after you've killed the mob, you're going to want to run over all of those little orbs on the ground, make sure they're all gone before you try and loot, or they'll explode and you'll die. Then we're going to run over to our next plot here. So we can see on the left we've got one, on the right we've got one for the light blue text. Yellow's more valuable, so we take yellow. And always we're going to throw our damage out. We're going to try and stutter step around. The mobs will swarm you and you'll die if you're squishy, or if you don't have enough damage to just, one-shot them. And if you look at the plaques before you make your selection, the gray text mobs are your tier 1. Then you've got standard white text is your tier 2, and then at the bottom there, the light blue. So here, purple's more valuable. It was 1 and 1, we take purple. The light blue text is your tier 3. And then you can spawn tier 4, which is going to be a boss, which will be sort of like an orange, brownish, very obvious special text. Here I have a mob that is crit resistant, so it's going to take me a couple moments to burn him down. All right, with that guy down, we're going to go ahead and run up to our last plot here. In this case, we've got 1 and 1 again. Yellow is more valuable than purple, so we're going to take yellow again. And again, making sure to stutter step around. And here I'm going to make a mistake. See, I'm degenning, but I'm trying to loot, not paying attention, so you die. All right, and just a couple last items to discuss. Generally, when I farm harvest, I will tend to save it until the end of a map. Occasionally, depending on the map that you choose, that will require a little bit of backtracking. But I like to go through the entire map and see which altars spawn. And if I can grab some that give me additional quantity, I will take them. But it is not the most important thing, particularly with the red altars. I will take currency drops, things like that, over the quantity. But if there's not a very good option other than the quantity and the downside is not terrible, then I will go ahead and take those and then, go through and kill the boss. And then the last thing I'll do is run back and complete the harvest. And I think that is about it. So, just to recap, you've got your 3 colors. You want to make sure that you know the price. You're going to take all the nodes on the Atlas passive tree. You're going to run one of the compasses associated with the color of your choice. And then you will optionally run the guaranteed Sacred Grove compass, if that is to your taste, but it is not required to make good profits from harvest. And then in the map, when you are in the Sacred Grove completing your harvest, you will prioritize the highest available number of the light blue text at the bottom of each plaque, and also selecting for whichever crop is of the color that is the most valuable. In an instance where you have, for example, yellow and blue, where the yellow has, 1 and the blue has 2, I will prioritize the higher number over the value of the color. So in that example, I would choose the blue plot that has 2 of the light blue, tier 3 mobs on it, as opposed to taking the yellow plot that only had 1. But if they're the same, you're always going to take the color that has the most value. And then obviously if one of the plaques does not have any light blue and the other one does, you always will take the one that has tier 3 mobs. And then if there is a boss, you will always take the boss. They will drop sometimes more than 1,000 life force. They have a chance to drop sacred blossoms, which sell for about a divine orb. And once or twice, I have actually had a boss get duplicated. And in that case, you can reap fairly substantial benefits, sometimes as much as, almost 3,000 life force and, a sacred blossom, all from just one little plot. And that is it. I hope that some of the information contained in the video was interesting, engaging, or informative for you. If it was, please do hit the like and subscribe button. And let me know in the comments below, how did I do as far as a beginner's guide? Again, it's not something I typically would do for the channel, but I wanted to at least put something out there for newer players that might be interested in getting into Harvest. And it was actually kind of fun yesterday to take a break from the League mechanic and just, go full in on farming sort of low investment Harvest and Harbinger. And I was surprised at how easy it was to sort of make a bunch of currency without having to juice up every map and have it be a stress fest. And so, yeah, I hope to see you guys in the next video. I appreciate you.